Looking back, I should have noticed the cracks sooner. They weren't large, not at first. Just small, imperceptible shifts in Claire's behavior that, at the time, I wrote off as stress or fatigue. But cracks, once they appear, tend to spread. Slowly at first, until everything breaks apart. It all started when Jack moved into our guest house. He had just finalized his divorce, and it hit him hard. He'd been married to Lauren for 8 years, and she left him for some tech guy she met at work. The whole thing blindsided him, and he was devastated. As his best friend, I didn't think twice when I offered him the guest house. It was the least I could do. Claire was supportive of the idea. She understood Jack's pain. He'd been close to both of us, always coming over for barbecues, family holidays, you name it. Jack was like a brother to me, and she treated him like family. At first, it felt good to have him around. Claire would make him dinner when I had late shifts, and we'd all sit down together like old times. It felt like we were helping him through one of the hardest periods of his life. But then, Claire started changing. Subtle at first, so much so that I didn't really pay attention. She'd go to bed earlier than usual, claiming she was exhausted from running after Daniel all day. She stopped waiting up for me like she used to. Normally, I'd come home late from training and find her in bed with a book, the soft glow of a reading lamp lighting up her face. But now, I'd walk into a dark bedroom, her back turned to me, already asleep. One night, I finally brought it up. We were in the kitchen, the scent of spaghetti sauce filling the room. Daniel was at the table, drawing out a napkin, completely engrossed in his own world. I watched Claire move about the kitchen, but something felt off. It was like I was watching a stranger go through the motions of my wife's routine. "Claire, you've been distant lately," I said, leaning against the counter. "Is something going on?" She paused, her hand still on the wooden spoon she was stirring with. For a moment, she didn't respond, and I thought maybe she hadn't heard me. But then, she sighed and turned to face me, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No, nothing's wrong," she said, her voice a little too light. "I've just been tired, you know? Running after Daniel all day, and well, it's been a lot lately. More than usual?" I asked, watching her closely. She shrugged, turning back to the stove. "Yeah, I guess. You know how it is, with you being away more often. It's just hard." I wanted to press her on it, but Daniel was there, and I didn't want to have a serious conversation in front of him. Instead, I let it slide. I convinced myself she was right. Taking care of a 6-year-old while I was out working long hours must have been overwhelming. She had given up her job when Daniel was born to be a stay-at-home mom, something we both agreed was the best decision for our family. But maybe, over time, it had worn her down more than I realized. But then, there were the texts. Claire had always been friendly with Jack, but now they were texting each other more often. I would catch a glimpse of her smiling at her phone and assume she was talking to one of her friends. But one night, as we were lying in bed, I glanced over and saw Jack's name on the screen. "You guys are texting a lot these days," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Claire didn't look up from her phone. "Yeah, he just needs someone to talk to, you know. It's been really hard for him since the divorce. I get that. But I'm here for him too." She finally looked at me, her expression unreadable. "I know. But he talks to me about different things, I guess. Things he might not feel comfortable telling you." I frowned, not sure how to respond to that. Jack and I had shared everything over the years, our fears, our frustrations, even our doubts. What could he possibly be talking to Claire about that he couldn't tell me? "Okay," I said, trying to push away the discomfort settling in my gut. "Just let me know if you need help with anything, all right?" She smiled, reaching over to touch my arm. "I will. Don't worry, it's nothing." But the thing was, I was worried. I just didn't want to admit it. It wasn't like I suspected anything yet. I mean, why would I? Claire had always been loyal, supportive, the foundation of our family. And Jack, he was my best friend. The idea of something happening between them was unfathomable. Still, the feeling lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I didn't want to be one of those paranoid husbands, but the more I tried to ignore it, the more it consumed me. I remember one night, a few weeks later, I came home late from a long training exercise. The house was dark, except for a faint light coming from the guest house. I glanced over and saw Jack sitting inside, a beer in his hand, staring at his phone. I hesitated at the door for a moment, debating whether to go over and join him, but something held me back. Instead, I went inside, hoping to find Claire waiting up for me. She wasn't. I checked the bedroom, empty. The kitchen, empty. Finally, I found her in Daniel's room, sitting beside his bed, staring down at him as he slept. "Hey," I whispered, stepping inside. "You okay?" She looked up at me, her eyes distant. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just checking on him. He's out cold," I said, smiling softly. "Like usual." She nodded but didn't move. I walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder, hoping for some connection, something to bridge the growing gap between us. But her body felt stiff under my touch. "I'm heading to bed," I said after a moment. "You coming?" "I'll be there in a bit," she replied, not looking at me. I stood there for a few seconds longer, hoping she'd say something more, offer some explanation for the coldness that had settled between us. But she didn't. She just stayed there, staring at Daniel as though she was a million miles away. As I walked back to our bedroom, that knot in my stomach tightened. Something was wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the life we had built was beginning to slip through my fingers. The days blurred together after that night. Claire and I moved through our routines like ghosts, our interactions growing more distant and strained. I busied myself with work, pouring my energy into the military exercises that demanded my full attention, all the while carrying a gnawing sense of dread. Something was off, and it felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, peering into the abyss below. One Saturday, I was home early, taking advantage of a rare break from my duties. The sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the chaos that was our house. Daniel's toys scattered across the floor, remnants of last night's dinner still lingering in the sink, and Claire's usual vibrant energy nowhere to be found. She had taken Daniel to a nearby park, hoping to give me some quiet time, but the stillness felt suffocating. I grabbed a cold beer from the fridge and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. Jack had texted me earlier, inviting me for a drink later that evening to catch up. I agreed, eager to get out of the house and unwind, but as I sat there, my thoughts kept drifting back to Claire. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something vital. A few hours later, I heard the front door open. Claire's voice floated into the house, cheerful and light, followed by Daniel's excited chatter. I forced a smile as they entered, watching as Claire set down the bags filled with snacks and toys from their outing. "Hey, buddy!" I called out to Daniel, who immediately raced over to me. "Did you have fun?" "Yeah. We saw the ducks and played on the swings," he exclaimed, his face glowing with happiness. "That sounds great," I said, tousling his hair. I turned to Claire, who was putting things away, but her smile felt strained, like it was a mask she wore to hide something. "Did you two have a good time?" I asked, trying to catch her eye. "Yeah, it was nice," Claire replied, her voice lacking its usual warmth. She busied herself with arranging snacks on the counter, avoiding my gaze. "Just nice?" I pressed lightly, sensing the wall between us. Claire glanced at me, then back to her tasks. "You know how it is, some days are just busier than others." I opened my mouth to say something, but Daniel chimed in. "Can we have a picnic in the backyard, Dad? Please?" His enthusiasm was infectious, pulling me away from my worries, and I nodded. "Sure, let's do it," I said, putting aside my concerns for the moment. We spent the next hour in the backyard, laying out blankets and enjoying the snacks. Claire joined us, but her laughter felt rehearsed, her eyes darting to her phone every few minutes. Later that evening, after Daniel had gone to bed, I headed to the bathroom. As I washed my hands, something caught my eye. There, on the edge of the sink, was a used condom wrapper. My heart sank, a heavy weight settling in my chest. I felt like I had been punched in the gut, my breath hitching as I picked it up, turning it over in my hand as if hoping it would magically explain itself. "Claire!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the silence of the house. She appeared moments later, her expression shifting from curiosity to confusion. "What's wrong?" I held the wrapper out to her, my hand shaking. "What is this?" Her eyes widened, and for a moment, It felt like the air in the room thickened, the world outside fading away. I can explain, she stammered, her voice shaky. Explain? I echoed, incredulity flooding my words. You can explain why there's a used condom in our bathroom? It's not what you think, she insisted, her hands raising defensively. I found it in the guest house. Jack? I interrupted, the betrayal flooding through me. You mean to tell me this is Jack's? It's complicated, Claire said, her voice rising in panic. I didn't. Complicated? I spat, the anger surging to the surface. You don't just leave a used condom in my house and expect me to believe it's complicated. How could you do this to me? Claire took a step back, her expression shifting from panic to shame. I didn't mean for it to happen, I swear. Jack was just there for me, just there for you. I snapped. You let him move into our guest house to get over his divorce, and now he's in our bathroom? This is beyond betrayal, Claire! She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her hands trembled at her sides, and I could see the guilt and fear etched across her face. The silence between us was heavy, charged with the weight of everything unsaid, everything that had been building between us. Are you having an affair with Jack? I asked, my voice low but steady, forcing myself to face the truth of what was happening. No! She exclaimed, tears filling her eyes. It was just a mistake. We were both vulnerable, and I didn't know how to handle everything. I felt so alone with Daniel, and Jack understood. You felt alone? What about me? I demanded, the hurt slicing through me like a knife. I've been working my ass off for this family. I thought we were in this together. I know, and I'm sorry, she pleaded, her voice breaking. But you've been distant too. I felt like I was doing everything alone. I never wanted to hurt you, I just got lost. The tears streamed down her cheeks, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But it was quickly drowned out by the reality of the situation. The home we had built, the trust we had nurtured over the years, it was all crumbling before my eyes. You have to understand, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. I don't know if I can forgive this, Claire. This isn't just a mistake, it's a betrayal. She took a step closer, desperation etched in her features. Please, let's talk about this. We can work through it. I don't want to lose you. I love you. I shook my head, my heart pounding in my chest. Love? How can I trust your love when you've done this? I need time to think. With that, I turned away, leaving her standing there, tears streaming down her face. I felt as though I was watching my world unravel in slow motion. I had always believed our love was strong enough to withstand anything, but now, it felt like the very foundation of our marriage was built on sand. As I stepped outside into the cool evening air, I felt lost. I had to protect myself and Daniel, but I didn't know where to begin. The road ahead was murky, and I could feel the weight of the decisions I would have to make pressing down on me. In that moment, I realized I was standing at a crossroads, and one way would lead to the end of everything I thought I knew. The days following my discovery felt like a whirlwind. I moved through the house in a daze, as if the world outside had faded into a gray blur. Claire and I avoided each other as much as possible. Every conversation was charged with tension, each glance filled with unspoken words. I kept Daniel close, trying to shield him from the storm brewing between us, but it was a fragile facade. I spent hours lying awake at night, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and heartache. The image of Claire with Jack haunted me. I couldn't help but remember the way they laughed together, the way she looked at him when she thought I wasn't watching. My anger simmered just beneath the surface, ready to boil over. I knew I couldn't avoid the confrontation forever. It was time to face this head-on. That Saturday, I decided to confront Claire. I had spent the morning on the phone with a lawyer, gathering my thoughts and trying to understand the path ahead. I didn't want to rush into anything, but I needed to establish boundaries and protect my son. I could feel the weight of the impending conversation bearing down on me as I prepared myself for what lay ahead. I found Claire in the living room, seated on the couch, her phone resting on the coffee table. The atmosphere was heavy, almost suffocating, as I approached. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady but low. Claire nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Okay. I know things have been difficult. Difficult? I repeated, my tone rising slightly. That's an understatement. You've betrayed me, Claire. And now I'm left trying to figure out what this means for us, and for Daniel. I didn't mean for it to happen, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I told you it was a mistake. Jack and I, it was never supposed to go that far. It was just comfort during a hard time. Comfort? I scoffed, crossing my arms over my chest. You think a one-time mistake makes this any better? You let him into our home, into our lives, and now you want me to believe it was just a moment of weakness. How can I trust anything you say? Claire's eyes filled with tears. I know I messed up. But I love you. I want to fix this. We can get through it together. I promise. Fix this? I echoed incredulously. Do you even hear yourself? You think we can just go back to how things were? I'm not sure I even want that anymore. Please, Claire said, her voice breaking. I'm scared. I can't imagine my life without you. Daniel needs us together. Daniel needs a stable environment, not a home filled with lies and betrayal, I replied, the anger bubbling up again. How can I be the father he deserves if I'm living with someone I can't trust? I can prove to you that I'm committed, Claire insisted, desperation lacing her words. We can go to therapy. I can cut Jack out of my life completely. I'll do whatever it takes. You can't just erase what you've done, I snapped, pacing across the room. And even if you did cut Jack out, how can I know you won't find another way to betray me? This isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about Daniel's well-being too. I know, Claire said softly, tears spilling down her cheeks. I messed up. I thought I was being strong, taking care of Daniel while you were away. But I was weak. I should have come to you. I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my emotions. You say you want to fix this, but what does that even look like? How do I know this isn't just a plea for me to forgive you and pretend like nothing happened? Claire wiped her tears and looked me straight in the eye. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll be completely honest with you. Just give me a chance to show you that I can change. We've built a life together. Don't throw it away just because of one mistake. Claire, it's not just one mistake, I said, shaking my head. This isn't about a momentary lapse in judgment. You've changed the entire foundation of our relationship. I need time to think about whether I can forgive you, and whether I want to try to rebuild what we had. Time? Claire repeated, her voice filled with fear. How much time? What if you decide to leave me? I can't lose you. I'm not saying I'm leaving yet, I replied, my tone softening slightly. But I can't make any promises. I need to protect myself and Daniel. I need to understand what I'm dealing with here. Claire nodded slowly, her face falling as the reality of my words sank in. I get it. I deserve this pain, and I hate that I've hurt you. Just know that I will fight for you, for us. I won't give up without a fight. Fighting isn't enough, I said, my voice heavy with uncertainty. It's going to take more than just words. I need to see actions. I need to feel secure again, and right now, I don't feel safe at all. Claire opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence between us was deafening, filled with the weight of our shared history and the uncertainty of our future. I turned away, feeling the distance between us stretch further, knowing that we were standing on a precipice. As I stepped out of the living room, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I once knew was slipping away. The love we had built, the family we had formed, all teetered on the edge of collapse. I had a choice to make, and it felt heavier than ever. I had to protect my son, but I also had to decide if I could protect my own heart. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the darkness swallowing me whole. I had to confront my reality and the decisions that lay ahead. The path was unclear, but I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. The days dragged on after the confrontation, a painful limbo between what was and what could be. Claire and I barely spoke, communicating only when necessary, mostly about Daniel. I moved through the house like a ghost, haunted by memories of happier times. I had been doing everything to keep the facade of a normal family life for our son while internally, I was grappling with a storm of emotions: betrayal, sadness, anger, and an unsettling sense of loss. I spent my mornings at the gym, trying to drown my thoughts in physical exertion. Running on the treadmill, I found a temporary release, the rhythm of my feet matching the pounding of my heart. But once I returned home, the weight of reality would crash down on me again. One evening, as I watched Daniel play with his toys in the living room, Claire entered, her eyes searching for some semblance of connection. I could feel the tension in the air as she hesitated at the doorway. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft but tinged with uncertainty. I glanced at Daniel, then back at her. "About what?" "About how you destroyed our family?" "Please," she said, stepping further into the room. "I just want to explain how I'm feeling." "Explain?" I scoffed, crossing my arms defensively. "What's there to explain? You made your choice, Claire. You chose Jack over me." "It wasn't like that," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "It was complicated. I was lonely, overwhelmed. You were gone for so long, and Jack, he was there. I thought I could handle it." "Handle what?" I demanded. "An affair? You can't handle betrayal and think it's just going to go away. It's not that simple." Claire sighed heavily, her shoulders slumping. I know. But I'm trying to be honest with you now. I realize I made a huge mistake. I never meant to hurt you." "Your words don't change what happened," I replied, my heart pounding with frustration. "I'm not sure I can forgive you, and I don't even know if I want to try." Claire looked down, her voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" "I'll do anything to make this right. I just need a chance to show you I can change." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You say you want to change, but what does that even look like? How do I know this isn't just another empty promise?" "I'll cut Jack out of my life completely," she promised, her eyes pleading. "I'll go to therapy. I want to work on myself, on us. I want to be the wife and mother you deserve." "Therapy?" I echoed, contemplating the idea. "And how do you expect that to work? What if you go and still have feelings for him?" "I won't," Claire said, her voice firm now. "I'm done with him. I realize he was a mistake, and I don't want to make any more mistakes. I want our family back." I felt a flicker of something, hope, perhaps, but I quickly pushed it aside. "I need time to think. I don't want to rush into anything." "Okay," Claire said quietly, nodding as if she understood. "I can give you time. But please don't shut me out completely. I'm still your wife. I love you, and I want to fight for our family." "Love? I don't even know what that means anymore," I said, my voice breaking. "You've shattered my trust. It's going to take more than just words to rebuild it." "I know," she said, tears filling her eyes again. "But I'm willing to try. For Daniel. For us." As Claire stepped back, I watched her retreat to the kitchen, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I was caught in a tumultuous wave of emotions: anger, sadness, and a faint glimmer of hope. Could I forgive her? Could we rebuild what we had? The next day, I met with my lawyer, Robert, who had been a supportive figure in this turmoil. He explained the legal ramifications of separation and custody arrangements. Sitting in his office, I felt both overwhelmed and relieved to have someone guide me through the complexities ahead. "So, what are you thinking?" Robert asked, leaning back in his chair, assessing me carefully. "Do you want to file for divorce?" I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I'm not sure. I mean, I can't keep living in limbo, but I also don't want to throw everything away without considering all my options." "Taking time is wise," he said. "But you also need to be honest with yourself about what you want. If you believe there's a chance for reconciliation, I suggest starting with counseling, together. It could provide a clearer perspective." "I don't know if she deserves that chance," I admitted, the weight of my emotions creeping back in. "But Daniel, I can't let him suffer because of our mistakes." "Exactly," Robert replied. "You have to think about what's best for him. No matter what happens, he needs both parents in his life. Open communication is key." As I left the office, a sense of clarity began to form. I realized I had to take control of my situation. I needed to prioritize Daniel and my own emotional well being, whether that meant working towards reconciliation or moving forward separately. Later that week, I approached Claire about the idea of therapy. I spoke to Robert, and he thinks it might be a good idea for us to go to counseling together, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Claire looked surprised but relieved. You're willing to try? I think it's necessary, I replied. But I need to be clear that I'm still hurt, and it's going to take time. I understand, she said, her voice softening. I want to show you that I can be better, for you, for us. As we discussed the logistics, I felt a small flicker of hope ignite within me. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step towards healing, not just for our marriage, but for our family. Over the following weeks, we attended therapy sessions together, where we began to peel back the layers of our relationship. We navigated our pain, sharing our fears and insecurities. It was uncomfortable, but I could see Claire's determination to rebuild our bond. One evening, after a particularly intense session, we sat on the porch, looking out at the stars. The air was still, filled with the soft sounds of crickets and the rustling of leaves. I'm really glad we're doing this, Claire said, breaking the silence. It feels like we're finally starting to communicate. Yeah, it's a start, I replied, feeling more at ease. But it's just the beginning. We have a long way to go. I know, she said, her voice steady. But I'm committed to making things right. For us and for Daniel. I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. As we sat together in the quiet of the night, I realized that while the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, we were taking the first steps towards healing. Whatever the future held, I was determined to move forward, one step at a time, for the sake of our family.